Hello everyone, welcome back to Speaking Spurs and me, Kieran, talking all things Tottenham. Today we're talking transfers. Apologies if you can hear a lot of background noise. I appear to pick the worst time to come on lunch break. I think they just turned the engine off to the machine that they're working with. So transfers. We've got a lot of work to do, 2 days to do it. Some movement has already started to happen. We're going to talk about mainly players that are going to go out of the club and a couple that might come in. So let's just start off with the thing that we already know. Spence, it has been announced, he has gone on loan to Leeds, 1 million fee. So he's earned us a little bit of money, got him off the wage books for a season. Very much not had a look in under Conte, and was believed to be a club signing. And this is part of the issue when you're going around signing players that you think fit a certain system. We've had quite a lot of managerial changes in a while, which means we've been left with a lot of players that have been brought in for other managers that don't necessarily fit certain systems. Although we thought Spence would fit an Antonio Conte system, didn't really get a look in, was shipped out on loan, did okay, he's come back, not really impressed. Postecoglou, I'm wondering if some of that comes down to attitude. I think there were a few signs of that just before we signed him. We saw photos of him with the cigar and stuff like that. So attitude was always something that might have been questioned, and I'm assuming the fact that Postecoglou hasn't been overly impressed, it might be to do with that as well. I very much doubt at his age it's just because he doesn't fit a system. So, gone out on loan. The club very much decided they weren't going to sell him, and I think that's because of how young he is, and there's a possibility that he could develop, and we spent a lot of money on him. And there's no chance we were going to recoup that in that transfer window. So it's a sensible thing for him. He'll look at it as a step back because he's gone back to the Championship. But actually, I think it's one of the best things they can do to try and get him back on track. A player that's very much linked with a move away at the moment is Tanganga. Ever since he was brought into the first team by Jose Mourinho, he's had a very up and down time. He's had a few injuries that I think have really held him back. And, anytime he has come in, he's just looked a little bit overly aggressive and has really struggled to cement a place in the team, whether he be playing right back or as a centre back. So, clubs looking at him. There's actually been some offers on the table, apparently. So, Everton, they're a team very much trying to persuade him before Friday to join them. They're in need of reinforcements. Luton are another team that earlier in the window were linked with him. Lyon as well, which we didn't actually hear too much about, but apparently they've been keeping tabs on him. But the one today that we're hearing about is Torino, and it's no surprise considering the representatives of Tanganga. There's going to be a lot of links to Italian clubs, which we saw over the last couple of windows as well. So it will be a loan move. It won't be. We won't be looking to sell him just yet. Now, moving on to the next one, Højbjerg. There's been a lot of talk about the Manchester United move. Now, I personally think Daniel Levy isn't going to want to do this one. Why would you want to strengthen a rival? And I think it is a player that Man United need right now. They need a reinforcement. Obviously, they let Fred go. McTominay's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. And I think, for me, and I know a lot of you on this channel will know that I see Højbjerg as an influential player. I think he's very underrated, and as I've said many times, he's one of those players that you will probably miss when he's gone, because I think, especially we've seen it this season coming off the bench, he's been very good at holding out games. Last night, next to Skip, he didn't do a particularly great job, but I just think it was a midfield. Them two, they're very similar with each other. Lo Celso found it hard to get into the game, so it was a midfield that were very much shaky, but we know what he can do on his day. Moving on to a possible incoming, Ansu Fati from Barcelona. So we are still looking for somebody in that forward line. I think my issue with this one is, he can play as a forward. He scored 10 goals last season in all competitions for Barcelona. For us to take him, it is going to cost us 100% of his wages. Barcelona very much financially constrained at the moment. Oh, noise over there, just kicked up a bit. Apologies if that's disrupting this. But yeah, Ansu Fati, look, I think he's a decent player. There have been some people that have been kind of worried about links to him, like we had with Giovanni Dos Santos, a player with a possible big future that came in, didn't quite cut it, with the attitude party lifestyle. Ansu Fati, look, he's a decent player. My issue is, I think when he's not playing through the middle, has a habit of playing out on the left, and I just don't think that's something that we can look at the moment. We've got way too many people that are suited out onto the left. We need competition for Kulusevski out on the right. I don't know if he can really be that man. So It's a difficult one because I'd much rather just go out and buy Gift Orban. And it's going to keep coming back, and I think a lot of us would. I'd sign Gift Orban and send him back out on loan, bring in Brennan Johnson. He's your man for the season. Talks have ramped up for Brennan Johnson. We are apparently getting closer and closer to securing that deal. I think the majority of the reason this can be pushed through is purely because Nottingham Forest continue to try and sign players. They're a very, very busy club, and financial fair play, like with Barcelona, is influencing the possibility of letting go of probably their hottest prospect right now. Another possible outgoing, Tanguy Ndombele. He's been linked with several clubs so far. I did say in a previous video there was a surprise link with PSG, who had tried to sign him in many, many windows. The front runners right now look to be Genoa. They're apparently in advanced talks for a loan for Tanguy Ndombele, to the point where their officials feel they have an agreement in principle. They're ready to fly to London to complete the deal. It's just a question of whether Tanguy's going to want to go, and I think at this stage, with 2 days left in the window, he needs to make a decision on a club, because he's just going to be phased out. He'll be paying his wages, he'll be paid wages, and the only thing he will be able to play in will be the FA Cup, because by the looks of it, he's not going to be registered for the Premier League. So that, that'll be a very dismal season for him, pretty much sitting on the bench, not on the bench, just sitting at training and rotting away. Then the surprise one came yesterday when there was links of Eric Dyer with Bayern Munich. I know a lot of people reported on this yesterday, and I just needed to sit back and have a little think about it logically and whether it actually made sense. And the more I think about it, the more it does. I mean, for us, he cost us 4 million, so anything above 4 million is good. He's obviously coming towards the end of his contract, so we're going to want to get something for him. So to send him to a club like Bayern Munich, for the reasons it makes sense for them, is he's very versatile. He can play centre-back in a back three, he can play right-back, he can play in a midfield too. But I actually think he might be less exposed playing for a team like Bayern Munich. They very much have a lot of the ball. They dominate most of the games in their league, with the exception of maybe a game against Borussia Dortmund being difficult for them. He's a very good ball player. That is the one thing as a centre-back that is his best attribute, and it should be, considering the length of time that he played in midfield. It's just an annoying one for me. I hate that Eric Dyer's career took this downward spiral, and I think the decision he made to be a centre-back, obviously that's what he grew up being. He was a centre-back. He then, started at right-back for us. He moved into midfield because Pochettino convinced him that's where he could play. He's represented England in midfield and done a pretty good job. But I think by shoehorning himself back into the centre-back position, he has kind of done himself out a little bit. And for me, that's a big problem. Let me just turn that down. There, that's a little better. Sun just beaming through there. Yeah, I think he's kind of done himself out of a position there. There are times where we could have possibly used him in midfield in some games, but he said, look, I want to be a centre-back. Very much said that to Pochettino towards the end of his tenure. Made it known to Gareth Southgate that if he was going to select him for England, it needed to be as a centre-back. And maybe that was, slightly premature of him. He should have explored his options a bit more, because the versatility is one thing, and I think at this stage of his career, Thomas Tuchel can probably persuade him to come back against that and decide to be more of a versatile player again, and it will guarantee him more game time at the end of the day. So look, I wish him all the best if it does go through. I don't know whether it really will, but if not, there are Premier League teams definitely interested in him. But apparently he's happy to stay and fight for his place, wind down his contract and go at the end of it. So difficult one there. Next player to talk about, Reguilon. Obviously went out on loan last season, had an absolute shocker of a time at Atletico Madrid, didn't really play much at all, had an injury as well whilst he was there. He's come back, played some pre-season games as Ange was having a look at everybody. Just probably doesn't quite make the cut. A player that came in we're very excited about when he came in from Real Madrid. He'd had a good loan spell away from Real Madrid the season before we got him in, was a very much exciting player. Started life at Tottenham fairly well. Couple of injuries have held him back. Never really regained that form we very first saw. The one thing I liked about him was his ability to deliver the ball. That kind of dwindled, and he couldn't do that anymore. He might pluck out one good cross every few games now. So yeah, the surprise club, Manchester United, that were linked with him. Obviously, Cucurella is the player they're after first and foremost, and I think Reguilon will be their backup. He's a player that I don't think will be short of suitors across places like Spain. I think there'll be many clubs that are quite happy to bring him in. Higher profile clubs that he wants to go to, maybe not so much. But we'll see how that one develops. Other players, Brian Hill probably won't go anywhere just because of the injury that he's had. I think unluckily for him, it's all come at the wrong time. Hasn't been able to show anything that he can do for this season. So he might be somebody that will end up having to go out in January instead. Who else? Davinson Sanchez. We had a bid from Rennes that we turned down. It worked out about £7.7 million. We're looking closer to the £10 to £15 million mark. And obviously, look, I'm not going to go back into stuff about last night. I've had a few back and forths with some Spurs fans that have been like, he's been rubbish ever since he came to us. And not so much, actually. I thought he, when he's covered for players in the past for a prolonged period, he's been fine. He's not a very good player when he's only a bit part player. And I completely get that. But yeah, time to move on for him. But if we do get rid of Tanganga and Dyer, the question is, do we then get rid of Davinson Sanchez, or do we just make him stay for the cover? Because it depends who we bring in. And Adebayo was somebody obviously that we were really looking at. There have been a few other surprise links. Probably the biggest surprise is Wout Faes, however you pronounce it, the centre back from Leicester, and he did actually play in their cup game. So he's a player that they probably don't want to lose. They're not looking to get rid of, and he has been playing minutes for them. So we'll see how that one develops. Yeah, let me just look down the list and see if there's anything else that I've missed or want to talk about. Oh yeah, there was a strange one that came out the other day. Our scouts had watched Metz and Georgia attacker Georgia's Mikotadze, if that's how you pronounce his name, Mikotadze. So for those of you that don't know anything about him, he's a 22-year-old attacking player. He spent 7 years at Lyon's academy, got 26 goals and 10 assists with Metz. That's where he's at the moment. That was when they won Liga 2 in France. He won the Golden Boot for them there. And then back in Ligue 1, he made a positive start so far this season. 2 goals and 1 assist in 3 games. 16 caps for Georgia and 4 goals. 3 years left on his contract. Burnley actually failed to land him earlier in the window. West Ham and Leicester are clubs that also want him. Ajax are probably the biggest club that have been circling. But yeah, don't really think he's one that we will actually look to bring in. I apologise if it's just got a bit blown out and bright. The sun has really shone through the trees behind me. We're about to wrap the video up now anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know about any of the players I've spoken about. If anything else happens today in the transfer window, I'll try and get another video out tonight. So thanks for sticking around. I have been Kieran from Speaking Spurs. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. And until next time, come on you Spurs.